The builder pattern is like following a recipe to make a complex dish. Instead of making the dish all at once, you follow the steps one by one, like preparing ingredients, cooking, and then serving. In programming, the builder pattern breaks down the creation of a complicated object into smaller steps, so you can easily change or customize each step. This way, you can use the same recipe or process to create different variations of the dish or object without changing the overall method. So this is the example we will be creating in this tutorial. The builder pattern will be populating this list with different types of books, default book list or a custom book list. So this is the tutorial for today. Within your SwiftUI project, create a new struct called books. Select Swift file, click on next. Type in books. Next thing to do is to create the actual struct, books, identifiable, I spelled it incorrectly, identifiable. So the struct for the books will include an ID, UID, which is always unique, bar name, string, author, which is string, image name, string, bar price, which is string. So now our books struct is complete. The next thing we need to do is to create our book list class. So create a new Swift file. Save the file as book list. Then enter the following. Import SwiftUI. Import observation at observable class book list bar data books. The next thing we need to do is to create our initializer init data open bracket books close bracket, so the initializer will be accepting an array of books. And then each time when the data changes, the updated data will be observed and published to the content view. That's why we're using observable on line 12. So the next thing we need to do is create a new method, static function, default book list, which will return a book list object. Which is an array of books. Return book list builder. The book list builder class doesn't exist as yet, so we'll create it later. The next thing we need to do is to add our attributes for the book onto our add book method. Dot add book, open bracket, name. So that doesn't exist neither, so I think the best thing to do is to create our book list class first. So let's create another class named book list builder. Book list builder. And now let's implement that class book list builder, private bar data books. So it creates a new empty array of books. Function add book. This is the function that we needed in the previous class, but it didn't exist at that time. String author string image name string and price string, and this will return a book list builder object. The next thing we need to do is to create an instance of the books. Let book equals books, and use the following parameters, which are name, author, image name, and price. Data dot append book. So we add the new object to the books collection, to the books array, and then we just return self, which is returning a book list builder. And then now we can go back to our book list and then implement the following. So that should be add books and provide the parameters that's needed. So the books, that includes To Kill a Mockingbird, author, Harper Lee, image name, I'll just call it book 1, and the price £12.99 or £12.99. And then for our next book is Pride and Prejudice. And we're using similar book names that we used in the previous tutorial. Author, and the image name is Book 2, price £9.99. And then we just enter our other two books that we need, which includes author, the book, book 3, price $14.99, and then the final book, Yahuwah Bible, and the image name for the book is Book 4, the author, Daniel W. Merrick, So the next thing we need to do, we need to return to our book list builder class, because we need to add the build method. The purpose of the build method is to add the books to the builder. And also to initialize the books as well onto the builder. So let's navigate back to the book list builder class and then add our build method. Function build. Book list. Return book list data. So what that does, it creates and returns an instance of the book list initialized with the data array. We also need another method, so let's implement it whilst we're still in the book list builder class. The next method that we need is called reset, and the purpose of this method is to reset the array to remove all the elements from the builder. Book list builder data dot removal, and then return cell. Now we can return to our book list, and then within our book list we need to call the build method to create an instance of the book list with the added books. So we need to type in .build. Now let's compile it. Just compiling at the moment. It's compiled. So the next method we need to create is the custom book list method. So we create that method after line 34. Static function, func custom book list book list. Now, as we've done previously, we need to return an instance of the book list builder and chain the method calls to add books and the reset builder and to add more books to the builder. So that's what we'll do now. Book list builder dot add book. If you want to, you can just add any book that you want. Image name is blank because at the moment there's no book for that one. There's no image for that book at the moment. The price $10.99. Add another book onto the builder. Brave New World. Author. Image name, let's make it blank. Something's happened to the recording. Something's happened to the OBS, so let me check it. Oh, there it is. The price is $11.99. And then we will call .reset. And the purpose of adding .reset there is just to show how the builder works. So with .reset, all the books within the builder will be removed. So all of these books will be removed. So we just want to add one book to the builder, which will be this one. which is Fahrenheit. .451 author. There's no book, so just leave it blank. And the price, £13.99. And now to add this book on lines 47 to the builder, we will just type in the following, which is .build. As you can see, if I look at the definition, .build, it creates and returns an instance of the book list which has been initialized with the data array, which is here. That colon, we can delete that. So now let's compile it to make sure it's compilable. In the next tutorial, we will implement the content view. So the content view uses the builder object and then is then populated with all the books onto the content view using a list. The builder pattern is like following a recipe to make a complex dish. Instead of making the dish all at once, you follow the steps one by one, like preparing ingredients, cooking, and then serving. In programming, the builder pattern breaks down the creation of a complicated object into smaller steps, so you can easily change or customize each step. This way, you can use the same recipe or process to create different variations of the dish or object without changing the overall method. So this is the example we will be creating in this tutorial. The builder pattern will be populating this list with different types of books, default book list or a custom book list. So this is the tutorial for today. To call the methods from the builder to populate your list, open the content view and type in the following. At state private var books equals book list dot default book list. The reason why we're calling the default book list function is because we want the sets of records to first be retrieved from the default book list. Which is here. So when the user clicks on the default book list button, these will be the first records that are retrieved and populated within our list. We can delete lines 15. Then type in navigation view. VStack. And now we will define our list books.data. Booking. So now we're inside our closure. We create our HDAC. The next thing we need to do is to add our image. Book.image name. .resizable. .frame. Width 80. Height 120. Corner radius is 8, just to make the book edges curvy. You can see there's a curve on each of the corners. The next thing we need to do is to add our name, the book name. To do that, we have to create another VStack. Alignment, leading, spacing, 5. Text, book.name. .font, .title, .font weight, and you can see the preview is very slow because my MacBook is very slow at the moment. That's why a lot of the times I don't use the preview. Next thing we need to do is to add the author's name, book.author, .font, subheadline, and then we need a spacer. Next thing we need to do is to add the price, book.price, font, headline, foreground color, orange. After line 38, we just need to add a vertical padding, vertical 5. The next thing we need to do is to add our buttons and our navigation bar title, although we don't really need the navigation bar title, but I'll just add it. So we add our navigation title after lines 44. dot navigation title. Navigation bar title. Book list. Display mode. Large. Dot list style. Plain list style. The purpose of having a plain list style is just so that the list has a plainer, simpler look. The next thing we need to do is to add our buttons so that we can select the different types of books. That includes default book list or custom book list. So to create our buttons, we need another H stack, horizontal stack, button, action, books equals book list dot default book list. For that button, we need a caption. The caption for that text will be default book list dot font title 2 dot padding background the background color is green. The foreground color, which is the color of the text, that will be white dot white. Corner radius is 10. Dot frame max width infinity, and it should be max width infinity. And the purpose of using infinity for max width is to make sure that the two buttons are the same size, same height and width. It should be dot infinities, so there should be a full stop there, and then infinity. So now we create our next button. So we can just copy and paste the previous button that we just done. Paste it anywhere after line 61. And then we want to call our custom book list function. For the caption, we want to call it custom book list. Background color, that should be orange. I think I've forgotten something. After line 61, we need to add some padding to the default book list button, and also some padding to the custom book list button, just to remove the spaces between here. And then now I will run it. So by default, the content view will display the default book list buttons within the list. But if I click on the custom button, you will see that the data has been retrieved from the book list builder for the custom button records, which is here. And it only retrieves this record here, Fahrenheit, and the reason why is because it's been reset on this line. So if I take out the reset method, then you will see that all of the books for the custom book list will be populated. So the custom book list will include 3 books instead of 1 book that it had originally. So now I will just rerun the application. And now I will click on custom book list and you will see 3 books populated, as you can see, because I didn't reset the array. That's what we've done in the previous tutorial. The reset method resets the array. So this is just a short example how to use the builder pattern within Swift, and also using a bit of SwiftUI as well for the UI. Thank you for joining us. If you found this tutorial helpful, please comment, like and subscribe. See you next week. In this tutorial, we will be using the factory pattern to display a list of books. The factory pattern is like a recipe book for creating objects. Instead of making objects directly in your code, you follow a recipe from the factory. This makes it easier to change how objects are made without having to rewrite a lot of the code. So this is the example we'll be using. So the user can select from a default list of books by clicking on the default books button, or classic books, or sci-fi books. And the functionality is achieved by using the factory pattern. Within your SwiftUI project, add a new file, Swift file, and name the file books. This will be our book struct. Select Swift file and type in books. Next thing we need to do is to create our book struct, identifiable, let ID equals to UUID, to enable each book to have a unique ID when it's being displayed within the list. Var name string var author string var image name string var price string. The next thing we need to do is to create a new class called book list. Select Swift file as a file type, enter book list, click on create, class book list. The purpose of the book list class is to have or hold an array of books. So we have a property called data, which is an array of books. That should be books. Also need the colon there after the data. Our next file we need to create is our book list factory class. Select Swift file, click on next. Type in book list factory. And now we will define the factory class for creating the book list instances. So we need to type in class book list factory static function create default book list. And then this will return a book list object. And then the next thing we need to do is to create our book list variable instance. Book list equals book list. And then we type in book list.data equals open bracket, close bracket. So here we will apply our book data elements to our array. think I have some on the clipboard. Yeah, let me do it again. Book list, data. So this array was like taken from the previous tutorial that we've done. So I'm just reusing it. And then we need to return a list of books to the caller. So this function, this static function, creates our default book list. So now we create another function to create a classic book list that contains different types of books. So what we will do, we can copy between lines 11 and 22. Paste it there. Rename this function to be classic. Create classic book list. And then for the name parameter, we'll just enter a new book, which is 1984. George Orwell. For the image name, no image. For the price, just do $10.99 or any price that you want. For the next book, just enter Brave New World. Aldous Huxley for the author name. For the image name, just type in no image. The price, $11.99. For the third book, just enter Fahrenheit 451. For the author name, Ray Bradbury. For the image name, no image. For the price, £13.99. For the fourth book, just enter Animal Farm. George Orwell, no image. And the price, just make it $8.99. And then we can just create our science fiction book list function. So the factory, as you can see at the moment, it's able to create a default book list and a classic book list, and now we're creating a science fiction book list within the factory. create science, fiction, book list. So for the name, just enter June. Frank Herbert. No image, the price, $15.99. We just had 3 books in this one and not 4. Just to shorten the tutorial a little bit. So for the second book, just enter Foundation. The author's name is Isaac Asimov. The price is $12.99. For the final book, just enter Snow Crash. Neil Stevenson. Spelled Stevenson incorrectly, so this STEPHENSON. No image and $13.99. I'll just compile it. Just compiling at the moment. In next week's tutorial, we will implement the content view. So the content view calls the factory methods of the book list and then populates the lists on the content view with the books to be displayed to the user. So that's for next week's tutorial. In this tutorial, we will be using the factory pattern to display a list of books. The factory pattern is like a recipe book for creating objects. Instead of making objects directly in your code, you follow a recipe from the factory. This makes it easier to change how objects are made without having to rewrite a lot of the code. So this is the example we'll be using. So the user can select from a default list of books by clicking on the default books button, or classic books, or sci-fi books. And the functionality is achieved by using the factory pattern. We will now call our factory methods from our content view. Within your content view, add the following. At state, private var books equals book list factory dot create factory, and then create default book list. The purpose of that line is to create an instance of the book list so that we can use the methods within the book list factory class. Next thing we need to do is, after lines 14, enter the following. You can delete the text element, navigation, view, vstack, list books data, book in. So we're looping through the data collection, the data property of the books object, and then for each element of the book we will display the image name and the name of the book and the author's name of the book. But now we are just entering or creating the HTAP, alignment, top spacing 10, image. So to display the book cover, we use an image element to display the image name. Dot resizable. Frame width 80 and height 80. Let's just set the height to 80. Corner radius is 8. B-stack leading spacing 5. Text book to display the book name. Dot font title to style the book name within the text element. Dot font weight. Dot bold. Text book author dot font dot subheading. Subheadline. Spacer. And then we also include the book price. As a headline. Foreground color. Dot orange. After line 39, just add some vertical padding. That's 5 pixels. And then the next thing we need to do after line 42 is to add a navigation bar title. Just call it book list. Display mode, large. Dot list style. plain list style. So the plain list style is just used for a simpler look for the list. Now we create another H-stack. And the purpose of this H-stack is to include our 3 buttons, such as default books, classic books, or sci-fi books, as shown earlier. Button, action, think something happened with the recording there. So it's button, action, books equals book list factory dot create default book list. And then for our caption, that will be called default books dot font dot title 2 dot padding dot background, which is blue. The blue background for the button. Dot foreground color is white. So the caption for the button text will be white. Dot corner radius 10. And then to make sure that all of the buttons are the same size, we use max width. And then set it to infinity. And then we create our next button. So to create our next button, is similar to the previous button. We can just copy and paste what we've done, and then we just change the background and foreground and the text element for that button. So we can copy between lines 48 and 58. And then we just paste it anywhere after lines 58. And then for the button action, the method we want to be called is create classic book list. And then the title for the text element should be classic books. The background should be green for the background color. Foreground color is white, that stays the same. And then the next thing we need to do is to create our final button. So we do that after line 70. For the button action, the method we want to call within our factory is create science fiction book list, and the caption for the text should be sci-fi books. The background color should be purple. And the foreground color should be white. And then we need to add some padding. We add the padding after lines 83. Now I just compile it. It's compiled. And also you need to add the images for your book. You just add it to your assets, which is here. Just drag it over to your assets. And the reason why I didn't show you how to do that part, because that's not the aim of the tutorial. The aim of the tutorial is to create the factory pattern. Because I've done this in similar tutorials of how to add images or files to your assets. But if you need help how to do it, just message me on YouTube. So now I'll just run the application to see if it works or not. But the padding doesn't look too good. It looks a bit squashed to me. For the height, so the padding for the height, let's change that to 120 to see if that helps a bit. Yeah, that looks much neater. So now you can see that by default it displays the default books. You can see, so if I click on the classic books, the list will change to display classic books from the factory. As you can see, it displays the classic books, but those books, they have no images. And then to display the sci-fi books, just click on sci-fi button, and as you can see, it displays the sci-fi books, but with no images. So you can always add your images later if you want to, but really all of the data should be coming from an API. And where you would add your images is within your book list factory, which is here. So you just create your, or assign your image name. Just say if it was like a cartoon, Bugs Bunny or something, just type in Bugs Bunny there. And then you'd have your image here that relates to that record, Bugs Bunny. And that's the end of the tutorial. And if it helped you in any way, yeah, please comment, like and subscribe. Thank you for joining us. If you found this tutorial helpful, please comment, like and subscribe. See you next week. The prototype pattern is another well-known design pattern. It involves creating new objects by copying an existing object, known as the prototype. This pattern is particularly useful when the cost of creating a new instance of the object is expensive or complex. In this tutorial, this is what we will create. As you can see, it displays a list of books, but if I click on the clone button will then copy the books as a new instance of the object that we're using at the moment. As you can see, the original book instance has been cloned, and now we have a copy that includes a list of books, the same list of books that we have here in this list. So here's a duplicate copy. This is the original within the top list, and this is the copy within the bottom list. Within your SwiftUI project, the first thing we need to do is to create a new struct. The name of the struct will be called books. Now let's define our struct. Struct books identifiable. Let ID equals UUID to enable each book to have its own unique ID. Var name string. Var author string. Var image name string. Var price string. The next thing we need to do is add another new file called book list. Book list. Import the following. SwiftUI. Import observation. We need those two following frameworks. And then we need to create a protocol. Protocol clonable. A protocol defines a blueprint of the methods, properties, and other requirements that the functionality needs. So to create a protocol, the first thing we've done is to declare a protocol name. And then the next thing we need to do is to create the function signature within the protocol. Func clone self. So this means that any class or struct that adopts the clonable protocol must implement this method, and it also ensures that it returns an instance of the same type. by using the self keyword. The next thing we need to do is to add observable, and then create our class book list, implements clonable, our protocol. And then we can add our stubs to our protocol, which are the empty method functions. We'll implement that later. So the next thing we need to do is to create our data property that will store a list of books within the array. And then we need to create our required init method. The required keyword ensures that any subclass must implement this initializer. The next thing we need to do is to add a required convenience initializer for cloning. Required init data books self.data equals data. So what we've done there, we assign the path in data to the data array property of the instance. Our data was spelled incorrectly on line 21, so we need to remove the E. It should be data. And now what we need to do is to create our fetch function. And the purpose of the fetch function is to simulate an API call that will contain a list of books func fetch. So it's the same list of books that we've been using, or that we used within the previous tutorials. I already have the list of books on a clipboard, so I just paste it instead of like typing it out again. As you can see, it's the same list as I mentioned before, same list of books. So now what we need to do is to implement our clone function. So the clone function needs to return the following: return type of self init data self data. So on line 40, type of self returns the dynamic type of the current instance. And then it creates a new instance of the same type using the same data. So this is what this line does, or this function, the whole function, that's what it does. That's how it does the cloning. Now I'll just compile it just to make sure it's okay. The next file we need to create is our book list view. And the purpose of the book list view is to display a list of books. So we need to create a new SwiftUI file. And then type in book list view. The next thing we can do is start to implement our view. Bar books book list The next thing we need to do is to add a navigation view after line 13. Navigation view. And now we can add our list to contain the books that we want to be displayed on the screen. Book in, that's within our closure, hstack, alignment dot top, spacing 10. Image, book dot image name. I'm just going to see if the previews are working because my MacBook is very slow. image name dot resizable frame. So the size of the image will be, for the width, it will be 80 pixels in width and for the height it will be 120 pixels high. Corner radius, it will have curvy corners, so we just set it to 8. And that should be books and not book. Let's see if it's going to display anything on the preview. And I need a bracket on line 17. Oh yeah, we can delete our hello world text element. Okay, I won't bother with the preview, I'll just leave it. So the next thing we need to do is to add the VStack alignment dot leading spacing 5. And then we want to display our book name. For the font type, we just use dot title. Font weight, just use dot bold. And for the author, type in book author. Font type, dot subheadline. Add a spacer. And then for the book price, book.price, dot headline for the font, foreground color, dot orange. After lines 36, type in dot padding, dot vertical 5. And then after line 41, we just add our navigation bar title. For the title, we just called it book list. Display mode dot large for a large caption, and then we just use a plain list style. plain. And then after line 44, just add some padding. I'll just compile it. It's just building at the moment. In next week's tutorial, we will implement our content view so that our content view calls our book list view that we just created. And our content view will need to have a few buttons as well to perform the actual cloning of the objects. The prototype pattern is another well-known design pattern. It involves creating new objects by copying an existing object known as the prototype. This pattern is particularly useful when the cost of creating a new instance of the object is expensive or complex. In this tutorial, this is what we will create. As you can see, it displays a list of books, but if I click on the clone button will then copy the books as a new instance of the object that we're using at the moment. As you can see, the original book instance has been cloned, and now we have a copy that includes a list of books, the same list of books that we have here in this list. So here's a duplicate copy. This is the original within the top list, and this is the copy within the bottom list. Within our content view, we will call the methods in the prototype pattern to populate and clone our list. So the first thing we need to do is to create a new instance of the book list class at state private var original books equals book list. And we need to do the same thing to create a clone books instance. Private var cloned books book list, which can be optional. We can delete line 16, add a B stack, and then we use our book list view that we created in the previous tutorial. We pass the original book list to the book list view. Dot on appear. Original books dot fetch. So it calls the fetch method. Next thing we need to do is to add our button. And the purpose of this button is to enable the user to clone the book list or not. Clone books equals original books.clone. As you can see, the clone method is the actual function that does the copying. Clone book list for the caption, for the text element, padding, background color, which is blue, foreground color, which is white, so that's for white text, corner radius 8, on line 23 I missed out a colon, so there should be a colon there. Dot padding, if let clone books equals clone books, so if there's something to clone, then do the following. Clone book list, dot font, title, padding, book list view, clone books. Now I'll just run it to see if it works or not. Just compiling. As you can see, this is our list. It contains a single list of books. If I click on the clone button, you'll see two lists, one at the top and one at the bottom. As you can see, our book object has been cloned and the copy is visible within the second list. And this is the original list, the one at the top. So that's how you use the prototype pattern to clone objects within Swift, SwiftUI. Thank you for joining us. If you found this tutorial helpful, please comment, like and subscribe. See you next week. In this tutorial, we will implement the Facade Pattern. The Facade Pattern provides a simplified interface to complex subsystems. It hides the complexities of the subsystem and provides a simpler interface to the client. We will create a book list facet that provides a simplified interface for fetching different types of books from the list. This facet will interact with the book list class and hide its internal complexities from the client. As you can see here, so using the Facade pattern, we can filter on the different types of books, default book list, or classic book list, or sci-fi book list. The first thing we need to do is to create our new book struct. Select Swift file, type in books, struct, books, identifiable, let ID equals EUID, bar name, string, bar author, string, bar image name, string, bar price, string. The next file we need to create is a book list class. Select Swift file, click on Next, type in book list, import SwiftUI, import observation, at observable, to detect any changes, class, book list, bar data, books, so the purpose of using observable is to detect any changes within the book list class. And the data object would really, or should really, be retrieving the data from an API. But in our example, we'll be retrieving the data from hard-coded arrays. The next class we need to create is our book list facet class. Book list facet. And now we have to define our class, book list facet. And the book list facet class includes three functions, which are get default book list that returns a book list object, let book list equals book list. Create a new instance of the book list data equals open bracket, close bracket. So here within this section, open bracket and close bracket, we will add our array instances to our book list. So what I will do, I'll just copy the book information that we had in previous tutorials and paste it there. And then return the book list to the caller. So just like in the previous tutorials that relates to design pattern, we use the books example. So the books class has a book name, and the author, and the image name, and the price. So this is one object, this is the second object, third, and the fourth. The array will include 4 objects, 4 different books. The next function we need to create is the get classic book list function. I'll just copy and paste the function that we just created. And then rename the function. Get classic book list. And then get the code for the book list, the same books that we used in the previous design pattern tutorial. And then for the last function, we do something similar. We copy it, paste the function there, and then rename the function to get science fiction book list. And then I just copy and paste the book data here for the array. The reason why I copied and pasted it because I've typed out this array so many times in previous examples, previous tutorials. And it's the same array that I'm using for the design pattern tutorials. I'll just compile it now. So it's compiled. I'll just indent it a bit so it's a bit neater. Re-indent. In next week's tutorial, we will implement the content view to enable the content view to call the book list facet and display the UI with the populated data on the content view. In this tutorial, we will implement our content view to call our facet methods to populate our list. So the first thing we need to do is to create a new instance of our book list facet. Private let facet equals book list facet. At state private bar books equals book list The next thing we need to do is to create a navigation view. Navigation view, VStack, and then loop through our books, booking, within our completion, within our closure, and then within our closure we display our book.image name to display the image of the book. Make the image resizable. The frame for the image, the width 80 pixels, height 120, corner radius will be 8 for curvy corners, VStack, alignment, leading, spacing 5, display the name of the book, style the text element, make the text weight bold, and then we'll do something similar for the author, text, book author, which is the author's name, font, dot, subheadline, spacer, next thing we add is the book price, font dot headline, dot foreground, color, dot orange, dot padding dot vertical 5. Don't think the preview is working properly. Let me build it again. The next thing we need to do is to add our navigation bar title. That's after line 42. Navigation bar title. Book list. Display modes. Dot large. This was spelled incorrectly. Navigation bar title. I'll just select it. Navigation bar title. Dot list style, which is plain. Plain list style. The next thing we need to do is to add our 3 buttons to enable the user to get the default book list and the classic book list, and also the science fictional book list. So we add our buttons to a H stack. Spacing 10. Button action books equals facet dot get default book list. For the button, we need a caption, so we use a text element. Default books. I'll just turn off the previews because the previews, they're not working. Style the text element for the title. The frame, max width. Dot infinity. Just to make sure that each button are sized correctly and are the same sizes. Padding, background, color, blue, foreground, color, white, corner radius is 10. So let's run it just to see if it's working or not. For the first button, oh yeah, there's something else we need to do, which is I think we've done that, so let me run it. It's not loading. What is it doing now? My Xcode is really slow. Now it's installing. It's taking a while. So where's the button? I had to restart Xcode, but now it's running. So as you can see, it displays the first default button on the list. On the view. Just compiling at the moment. So now I'll click on the button. You can see that the list has been populated with the book information. So this is the Facade function that we just called, get default book list. And then it returns the array into the book list. And then the array is then used to populate the list using the data attribute of the books class. So the next thing we need to do is to just implement our other two buttons for classic books. So what we can do is just copy and paste the block between lines 48 and lines 59. Or between lines 48 and line 58, yeah, that's it. Just compile it just to make sure that it's correct. And the caption for this button is called Classic Books. Background color is green. And the method we need to call is the classic function. Get classic. So we need to rename this one because there's a T within classic that's incorrect. So I'll just jump to definition and then remove the T. I'll just run it just to make sure. Classic books, as you can see, it populates and displays the classic books or default books. So now we need to add the science fiction books. So just copy this block, what we've done previously. Get science fiction book list. Rename this to sci-fi. Sci-fi books. Background color purple. Now let's run it. Sci-fi books, classic books, and default books. Thank you for joining us. If you found this tutorial helpful, please comment, like, and subscribe. See you next week. The Mediator Pattern is a behavioral design pattern that facilitates the communication between multiple objects in a system without them needing to reference each other directly. Instead of the object referencing each other directly to communicate, they interact through a mediator object. This approach helps reduce the dependencies between the interacting objects, making the system easier to manage and maintain. To demonstrate the mediator pattern, we'll be using our original book application that we've been using in the previous design pattern tutorials. So the first thing you need to do is to create a new SwiftUI application. The next thing we need to do is to create our books class or book struct. New file, select SwiftUI. Name the file books. struct, books, identifiable, let ID equals UUID. That creates a unique ID. Var name, string, var author, string, var image name. String, var price, string. The next file we need to create is our author struct. Name the file author. Struct author identifiable let ID equals UID. Var name string var bio string. And then the next class we need to create is our book list class. And the purpose of the book list class is to hold an array of books. But really, it should be coming from an API. Import observation, import SwiftUI at observable, class book list, and then we need a variable called data that will hold an array of book objects, and then we create our same fetch method that we normally create within our design pattern tutorials. I'll just use the same data array that we used in the previous design pattern tutorial, so it's on the clipboard. The next class we need to create is called the author list. Author list. Similar to the book list class that we created. So I'll just copy and change some of these things. Rename the book list to author list. On line 19, rename it from books to author. within the data array, we need to be passing in author objects. So we need to pass in the name and the bio for the author. The name is Harper Lee. Bio. Author of To Kill a Mockingbird. And then I'll just copy and paste this to add another object onto the array. The author's name will be Jane Austen. And the author of Pride and Prejudice. Just add another element to the array. So the author name is F. Scott Fitzgerald. Author of The Great Gatsby. And then we just add our final element onto the array, which is Daniel W. Merrick. Author of Yahuwah Bible. Now I'll just compile it. Just compiling at the moment. Still compiling. It's compiled. So the next class we need to create is our Mediator class. Mediator import observation, import SwiftUI at observable to detect any changes within the class. Class Mediator. Bar book list, bar author list, Next thing we need to create is our initializer, book list, author list, author list. And the purpose of the initializer is to create an instance of the mediator class with these specific book lists and author list instances. Self.bookList equals to book list. Self.author list is equal to author list. So what that does, it initializes the book list property with the provided book list instance, and also initializes the author list property with the provided author list instance. Next thing we need to create is our fetch methods. So we need a method to fetch the books from the array, booklist.fetch, and we also need a method to fetch the authors from the array list, author list.fetch. The next file we need to create is our book list view, which is our SwiftUI view. Select new file, select SwiftUI view, click on next. Name the file book list view. At state var mediator, so we need to create a mediator object. Delete line 14. We need to create a navigation view. Within our navigation view, we need a list. And then we loop through our mediator book list data object. Within our closure, we need to add a HDAC, alignment, top, spacing, 10. We also need to add our image. Or something's happened with the recording. So our image is book.imageName dot resizable dot frame width 80, height 120, dot corner radius 8, V-stack, alignment, dot leading, spacing 5, text, book dot name, dot font, dot title, dot font weight, dot bold. Next thing we need to add is our author, book author. So display the author's name within our text element. Font dot subheading or subheadline. And spacer. And then we add the book price, font, headline, foreground color, dot orange, dot padding, vertical 5. And then to populate our list, we need to add the dot on a pair method. But we don't need a preview, so we can delete lines 48 to 51. So let's add our dot on a pair method. Mediator dot fetch books. Navigation bar title. Navigation bar title. Book list. Display mode dot large. List style plain. And then just add a bit of padding. And think there's an error somewhere. So this bracket on line 43, we need to move that after lines 51. Now I just compile it. Image name, there's an error somewhere. Book list, data. I had to restart Xcode, but it seems like it's compiling now. It's compiled. So the next thing we need to do is create another SwiftUI file and name the file author list view. Author list view. At state var mediator so we create an object mediator, and we need to add our navigation view again, list mediator dot author list dot data. Authors in, and then we add our restack, alignment dot leading, spacing 10. Something's wrong with the video. Text author dot name, font dot title, font weight dot bold, and then we just display the bio, the author's bio. Font dot sub headline, add some padding, On line 16, we need to delete the S from authors. Dot on appear. Mediator dot fetch authors. Navigation bar. Title. Author list. Display mode. Large. Dot list style. Plain list style. Dot padding. Just compile it. We don't need a preview. It's compiled. So now the final thing we need to do is to implement our content view. At state private var book list equals book list. At state private var author list equals author list. So create two object instances. Delete line 16 and then type in the following: let mediator equals mediator. You pass in the book list and the author list. So what that does on line 17, we initialize a new instance of the mediator class, passing in a book list and author list instances as arguments. And then to enable the user to navigate between the book view and the author's view, we will create a tab view, book list, view, mediator, mediator, tab item, and then the label, books, system image is book. And we do the same thing for the author list, tab item. I'll just copy and paste it and then rename it. Authors, for the system image, name, person. On line 13, made an error, so that should be authors list. Now I'll just compile it. and then run it afterwards. This tutorial is about the proxy design pattern. The proxy design pattern is like a middleman for an object. Instead of interacting with the actual object directly, you go through the proxy, the middleman. The proxy can help with tasks like delaying the creation of an object until it is really needed, lazy initialization, controlling who can access it, access control, or keeping track of actions like logging. To use the proxy pattern, we will create a book list class. We can create a book list proxy that controls access to the book list and fetch data on demand, as seen here in this example. The first thing we need to do is to create a new struct called books. Swift file, click on next. Struct books identifiable let's id equals UUID var name string var author string var image name string var price string. It should be var, not bar. And then the next file we need to create is the book list class. Import observation, import SwiftUI at observable class book list var data books to hold an array of books. Really, this should be coming from an API function func fetch I will just use the previous data array that I've been using for the other design pattern tutorials. I'll just paste it there. Same as before. Just pass the name of the book and the author and the image of the book and the book price to the arguments. The next thing we need to do is to create another class called book list proxy. import observation, import Swift UI at observable to observe any changes within the class book list, proxy, private var book list equals nil, which is optional. So the purpose of that line 16, is to declare a private optional variable to hold an instance of the book list. Initially, it is set to nil. Next thing we need to do is to create a computed property return book list data question mark data so on line 19 it returns the data from the book list if it exists, otherwise it returns an empty array. And that bracket shouldn't be there where observable was or is, should be like this. And we can delete the last bracket, which is on line 22. Next thing we need to do is to add our fetch method to fetch the books if book list is equal to nil. So if the book list hasn't been initialized as yet, then we need to create a new instance of the book list. And then we call the book list fetch method to fetch the books. I'll just compile it. Just compiling. So the next thing we need to do is open up our content view. And we need to create an instance of the book list proxy private var books equals book list proxy. We can delete line 17, add a navigation view, create a list to display each item of our books, books.data Within our closure, we need to add a H-stack, alignment, dot top, spacing, dot 10, image, book, image name, resizable, frame, '80, height, 120, corner radius, 8. V-stack, alignment, dot leading, spacing 5, text book, dot name for the book name, dot font, title, font weight, bold, add a spacer, text, book dot price, dot font, headline, dot foreground color, dot orange, dot padding, dot vertical, 5. Now we need to create our onAppear to call our books.fetch method to populate our list. So our onAppear needs to be called after line 40 to type in dot onAppear, books.fetch. Then we can add our navigation bar title, book list, display mode dot large, dot list, style, plain, list style. And then after line 46, we just add a bit of padding. Let's see if it works or not. Still trying to run, still compiling. Simulator is a bit slow. Oh, now it's finally loaded. As you can see, our list has been populated via the proxy. Thank you for joining us. If you found this tutorial helpful, please comment, like and subscribe. See you next week. In this tutorial, we will use the Singleton design pattern to display a list of books. Singleton ensures that only one instance of a class is created, provides a global access point to the instance. Since only one instance is created, it can help reduce memory usage compared to creating multiple instances. Singleton also ensures that all parts of the application use the same instance, providing consistency across the application. Within your SwiftUI project, the first thing we need to do is to create a new class and name the class Books. Select Swift file, click on Next, type in Books, and then we need to create our struct Books, identifiable, let ID equals UUID, so that each book has a unique ID using identifiable protocol. Var name string var author string var image name string var price string. The next thing we need to do is to create a new class called book list. Select Swift file, name the class book list, import observation at observable to detect any changes within the class book list, static let shared book list, on line 14, this is where we create our Singleton instance. And to make sure there's only ever one instance, we need to create our initializer, our private initializer, private init. And this will force and enforce a Singleton instance usage. And now we need to add our arrays variable, which is books. And then we have to create a method called fetch, function fetch, to fetch a list of books. And I'll just paste some code that I created before in the previous tutorial that we done. I think it was about 4 weeks ago. That uses the same collection object of books. I'll just compile it just to make sure that everything is okay in that file. What the problem is, on lines 11, observable should be on its own line. So just press the return key, press the enter key, and remove that bracket. And also, the bracket on lines 29, that should be the closing, one of these closing square brackets. I'll compile it again. And now we need to implement our content views so that we can test our Singleton instance. So the first thing we need to do is to enter the following: @state private bar books book list dot shared. On lines 12, what we're doing there, we use the shared instance of the book list. And now we need to navigate through each item within the books collection object. So to do that, we need to delete line 14 and then add the following: navigation view list books data open bracket books in. So the data attribute is our array that we created earlier. And then we need to create a HStack, alignment, top spacing 10, image book dot image name dot resizable dot frame width 80, height 120, dot corner radius 8. And on line 17, that should be alignment. Alignment, HStack, I think I'm typing it incorrectly. Still cannot find it. Let's do it again. HStack, align. top spacing 10. Yeah, that's better. And then we need to add our VStack. Dot leading spacing 5. And then we need to show our book name. Dot font, title for the styling. Dot font weight. Dot bold. And then we do something similar for the author's name, book author. Dot font. Subheadline. Spacer. Text. Book price. Dot headline. Dot foreground. Color. Orange. And then after line 36, we just add dot padding. Dot vertical 5. And then after line 39, we just add the following: dot on appear, books, dot fetch, and then we just add a navigation bar title. Let's call it book list. Display mode. Dot large. List style. Plain. List style. It's just to have a simpler look, so we just use a plain list style. And then on line 46, we just add dot padding. And then we just run it. And see if it works or not. I don't think the simulator's working. Oh, it's working now. Yeah, its code was playing up. So you can see that it retrieved the data using our Singleton class to populate our view with a list of books. And to populate the list of books for the images, you can use any images that you find online. So the images, they were just added to the assets folder. Thank you for joining us. If you found this tutorial helpful, please comment, like and subscribe. See you next week. Struggling with messy code or scaling your iOS apps? Learn how the MVVM design pattern can streamline your development and boost your Swift skills. In this tutorial, we will implement the MVVM design pattern, which divides responsibilities into 3 components. The model handles the data and business logic. The view manages the presentation layer and user interface. The view model bridges the model and view, handling presentation logic and ensuring a clean separation of concern. The first thing we need to do is to create a new Swift file, and within the Swift file we'll create a new struct called books. Struct books identifiable. Since we're looping through each of the elements of the array, we give each ID a unique ID. Var name, which is the name of the book, string, the author's name, var image name, which is string, and the price, which is string. The next file we need to create is the book data service class. Which is a Swift file. Book data service. Within the book data service class, type the following: class book data service. And then we need a fetch method to fetch the books. Func fetch books, which will return an array of books. Really, this should be coming from an API, a JSON API, or maybe a database such as Swift Data or Core Data. The next thing we need to add is the actual array of books, the same array that we've been using in our same design pattern tutorials. So I'll just paste that in the code. I won't type it in, I'll just paste it here. This is the same array we've been using in all of the design pattern tutorials on this channel. The next file we need to create is another Swift file. Within this Swift file, we need to create a new class called BookListViewModel. And the purpose of the BookListViewModel is to enable the BookListViewModel to communicate to the book data service layer to retrieve the array of books. As I said before, really, the array should be coming from an API, a JSON response. So now let's create the new file, Swift file. Name the file book list view model. Import observation. At observable to detect any changes. And then we add our class definition. Var data books. So there we created an empty array of books. Private let book data service equals book data service. So that will reference the data service. Add our initializer. When the initializer gets fired, it calls the fetch method. Create the fetch method. And the purpose of the fetch method is to populate our data array with all the books that has been fetched. Books data service dot fetch books. I'll just compile it. The next thing we need to do is to implement our content view so that we can display the list of books to the user. At state, private var view model equals book list view model. We can delete lines 15. Navigation view. Create a list to display the book information. View model data booking. So now we're in our closure. We add our HStack. Alignment, top, spacing 10. Image, book, dot image name, dot resizable frame, width 80, height 120, corner radius is 8, and then we need to create a V-stack. Alignment.leading, spacing 5, text, book.name, font title, font weight, bold. Then we have to create another text element, book.author, font, sub headline, spacer, text, book.price, headline, foreground, color, orange, and then after line 36 we add a bit of padding, vertical 5, is the preview working? Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work, but most times I don't use it because I need a new Mac. Yeah, because this Mac is not powerful enough, that's why I don't really use it. Navigation, bar title, book list, display mode, large, list style, plain list style. I'll just compile it now to see if it works or not. Just compiling at the moment. I'll stop the preview because it makes it very slow. Let's see now if it works. Here is the running app with a populated list of books using MVVM. And remember to add your images to your assets folder as well, as you can see here. Please comment and like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. If you found this tutorial helpful, please comment, like and subscribe. See you next week.